Kenyatta says he will attend the status conference for his crimes against humanity case at the International Criminal Court in The Hague, but in his personal capacity and not as President of Kenya. Kenyatta says the decision to temporarily hand over power is to protect his country's sovereignty and that of Kenyans. For more on the story, we're now joined live from Nairobi by SABC Correspondent Sarah Kimani, who will be talking to Tom Maliti, trial monitor at the International Justice Monitor. Good evening, Sarah. How was President Kenyatta's decision to travel to The Hague received by Kenyans?
Good evening, Lulu. Indeed, it's a historic moment in Nairobi, and it's been met with surprise. It's met some people actually praising him, saying that indeed it is very good that he has agreed to honor the summons to the status conference at The Hague. A lot of people also wondering what happens during his absence when his deputy and his very good friend William Ruto will be acting here in Kenya as a president. And now, Lulu, just to take over from that, I'll be joining Tom Maliti, who is a trial monitor working for the International Justice Monitor here in Nairobi, Kenya. Tom, thank you very much for joining us for your world today. And quite a historic moment. And a lot of Kenyans are surprised that President Kenyatta actually decided to take such a radical decision, so to speak. What is your immediate reaction?
I don't think his decision to attend the status conference is surprising. I don't think legally he had a choice on the matter. How he decided to handle it is what is surprising, in that he has decided to hand over power to his deputy so that, as he put it, the sovereignty of the Kenyan Republic may be safeguarded. And that was an unexpected move, but within the provisions and within the province of the Kenyan Constitution.
Would you say he has embarrassed the African Union and his political advisors, who have indeed for the longest time been telling him, stay put, you're not the head of state of a sovereign nation, do not honor any summons to the International Criminal Court?
I don't think he has embarrassed the African Union. I think his advisors may be disappointed, but they may applaud him in the way he has maneuvered and handled the situation. As far as the African Union is concerned, this is not the first time that the African Union has faced the question of what would happen if a head of state is faced with an ICC matter. In 2009, the African Union passed a resolution calling on African states not to honor the arrest warrant that had been issued against the Sudanese president Omar al-Bashir in connection with the Darfur cases before the ICC. Some African states have chosen to honor that resolution. Other African states have been categorical that they believe their obligations towards the ICC are more important than any African Union resolution, and have warned the Sudanese head of state that if he came into their territory, they would effect the arrest warrants against him. So in that sense, the African Union has been here before, and individual nations have made their decisions based on what their interests are.
And even today, when President Kenyatta was speaking, you could feel him, fighting what he feels Western hands or people behind the whole of this ICC issue, and even saying that it is a continuation of, mistreating African leaders. Have you felt that way?
Actually, I don't feel that way. One, because the cases that are before the ICC, the African cases, the vast majority of them have been referred to the ICC by African states, not by any other state. And in terms of the Kenyan cases in particular, these cases went to the ICC after Kenya failed to honor its own promises to institute a justice process for the victims of the post-election violence that happened after the 2007 presidential election. So in that sense, I don't think Africa is being specifically targeted. I don't think that Kenyan leaders are being specifically targeted. And in terms of how the court handles the cases, we have seen the judges being even-handed. There's the trial against Deputy President William Ruto and former journalist Joshua Rapsan that is ongoing. During that trial, we have seen the judges make decisions that go against the interests of the prosecution, and also against the interests of the defense.
Now, even as you say that, now let's look forward to Wednesday when the whole world will be expecting then to see President Kenyatta sitting at the International Criminal Court for the status conference. What should we expect?
We should expect that this status conference that is being held on Wednesday will be no different from previous status conferences, with the difference that Uhuru Kenyatta will be there in person. Ordinarily, these conferences are about judges and lawyers discussing perhaps submissions that lawyers have made to the judges, and judges seeking clarifications, or matters that are not related to the trial directly but may have impact on how the trial is conducted, and people discussing that. Beyond that, nothing else. In terms of what may come out of the status conference, that will emerge in the weeks following the status conference. The judges have said that the case against Kenyatta has reached a critical juncture. And therefore, if they're going to be making any decision, for instance, in line with what the prosecution has asked for, which is indefinitely adjourning the case, or in line with what the defense have asked for, which is terminating the case, the judges will do this after looking at all the arguments they've had, maybe even requesting for additional submissions by the lawyers, and then issuing in writing their decision. I think it would be important for them to make this decision in writing as opposed to just issuing an oral decision.
There is confusion as to whether Kenyatta's case is collapsing. Maybe you could just take the viewer, where are we now as concerns President Uhuru Kenyatta's case at the ICC?
At the moment, the prosecution has been clear that they do not have the evidence that can reach the threshold required by the court. That threshold is beyond reasonable doubt. That is a threshold that pertains to any criminal case facing anybody in the world. Now, the reason why the prosecution still wants this case to continue is that they say the records they've been asking for since April 2012, which they have not received. They say that when they receive these records, they will be able to determine for once and for all whether to withdraw the charges. And these records, they require them because it is the obligation of the prosecution to find incriminating evidence against anybody facing a case before them or before the ICC, or exonerating evidence. This is a requirement under the statute that guides the ICC.
So finally, can we say then that President Kenyatta's case is collapsing? And considering that we just now have Deputy President William Ruto and journalist Joshua Sang and President Kenyatta's case, which hangs in the balance, where then do the victims of post-election violence get justice?
I think if they're looking towards the ICC alone, they may not get justice, because what happened between December 2007 and February 2008 in Kenya affected a much larger part of the country than what is covered in the cases before the ICC. In the Kenyatta case, it is likely that this case may not continue. As far as the case against Deputy President William Ruto and former journalist Joshua Sang, the trial is ongoing. It has been ongoing since September last year. And it is likely that the prosecution will be calling a few more witnesses before the end of the year. Now, as far as that case is concerned, the witnesses may get some justice depending on what justice they're seeking. However, as far as Kenya is concerned, as a country, there are still many, many more victims whose cases have not been addressed, whether at the ICC or in Kenya. And those victims are still seeking justice. And the Kenyan government has an obligation to satisfy that need.
Thank you very much, Tom. We've been speaking to Tom Maliti, and a trial monitor for the International Justice Monitor. Of course, you can be sure that we will be here to tell you what happens on Wednesday, and indeed about Nairobi and East African region, where the East African office covers. Thank you very much for joining us, and have a good evening.